Hello there, my fishy friends. My name is Peter, and today is June 30th. So tomorrow, Canada Day, the Veddor River opens up for fishing again. And as usual, as I do every year, I'm going to give you a bit of a recap of the last season, and I'm going to make my prediction for the coming season, and just talk about the state of fishing on the Veddor in general. It's going to be a bit of a longer video, and I hope you enjoy it. So yesterday I went up to the limit hole, which is just above the fishing boundary on the Veddor River where the Chilliwack River hatchery is. And I went to look for red Chinooks up there. So these Chinooks travel up the river rather quickly, and they usually head straight for the hatchery. The hatchery was closed, I couldn't get a look in the hatchery channel, so I went and snorkeled in the limit hole, and that's where the reds would usually be if they're up there, and I did not see a single one. But I'm gonna roll on a little bit of footage from that snorkeling expedition. I got some really nice footage of feeding Rocky Mountain whitefish, which are kind of a cool species in the Veddor here, so let's have a look at that. Okay, so opening day, what to expect? This is kind of a tradition for some people to go out opening day, and the thing that you're most likely to catch opening day is trout. So the trout, over the last 2 months where the river's been closed, the trout get stupid. They forget all about fishing hooks. New trout come in from the Veddor and maybe from the Fraser, and maybe some trout travel down from Chilliwack Lake. So these fish, not used to fishing gear, they're gonna bite and you're gonna get them. And I just want to remind everybody that in all streams of Region 2 you must release all wild trout. So it's kind of a thing where when I snorkel in the lower Veddor River and the Chilliwack River, there are basically no large trout at all. And like this river, this is a fertile, productive river, lots of salmon eggs, lots of smolts. The river's got everything going for it. It's ideal trout habitat, and the big trout are just not there. And the reason that is a lot of people are unaware of that regulation and they kill them, or a lot of people are unaware that trout really are a very fragile species and they're easily damaged and easily killed if they're handled incorrectly. So I just wanted to put that out there before I start talking about the salmon. Let's get into it. I'm going to start with Sockeye. Another kind of public service announcement, if you will, and I hope I don't sound too preachy here, but Sockeye are not on the list of fish that we are allowed to fish for. When you look in the tables, it says the opportunities for fishing don't exist outside of these tables. It's not listed as a species that we're supposed to fish for. The Chilliwack Lake Sockeye run is reasonably healthy. It used to actually support a commercial fishery way back when, but they're still not numerous. And the Chilliwack Lake Sockeye, I keep saying the wrong thing. The Cultus Lake Sockeye are critically endangered, so I don't think we're ever going to bring that species back. Sockeye need a clean and cold lake to have their life cycle continue properly, and I don't think Cultus Lake will ever be that again. So to keep this species on life support doesn't make much sense to me. We're spending an awful lot of money to try and save these last, remaining sort of 30 to 100 sockeye that return to that lake. All that aside though, sockeye are not a species we're supposed to be playing with. They're not there for you to catch and release and catch and release. And sockeye tend to school up in very specific spots. So if you find yourself catching sockeye after sockeye after sockeye, you really shouldn't just be catching and releasing them. You should be trying a different type of water in that spot or moving spots altogether. And when you do catch a sockeye, keep them wet. Don't drag them up on the bank. They're very fragile. They're easily bruised and easily killed. They're probably the most fragile of all the salmon species that we have. Enough said about that. Let's talk about the Red Springs. everybody wants to know about those, right? I'm going to give you a little bit of historical context. These fish, the red summertime Chinooks that we get in the Vedder, are not native to this system. They were introduced by hatchery staff back in the 70s, and I believe the original stock is from Trap Creek up near Prince George. So these are Chinooks that are designed by nature to travel up the Fraser Canyon all the way to Prince George, and that's why they start their migration earlier, so that they can arrive at those spawning grounds in time to do their thing. So here in the Veddor, we get them. There are some in the river already, but like I talked about in the snorkeling video section, they're not up top yet. And it is a small run of fish. So historically, going back over the last decade or so, we normally get about 1,000 to 2,000 of these summertime red Chinooks. So basically less summertime Chinooks than we get steelhead. So we get about 1,000 to 2,000 hatchery steelhead every year, another like 5,000 wild steelhead. We get way fewer summertime Chinooks than that. Also, they tend to blow up the river really fast. Like, these are a strong fish. They shoot up the river to the hatchery pretty quick. So all that being said, these summertime red Chinooks are way more challenging to catch than steelhead. So I would say just kind of keep your expectations moderate. These are not a fish where you can just go and slay. That's why the limit is 1 per day, no matter the size of the Chinook. So just putting that out there. So 2 years ago and 3 years ago, we had exceptionally large runs of these Chinooks. So those 2 years, we got something like between 3,000 and 5,000 summertime red Chinooks. I don't know why that happened, but we got really big runs. And then last year, they didn't really show up. So last year, a bunch of people caught red Chinooks like opening week. And then after that, it was just crickets. Nobody was catching much. They were really hard to find. When I was snorkeling the river, I would see like 50, 60 sockeye and maybe 2 Chinooks. And when I saw that, I didn't even bother fishing for red Chinooks last year. But when I saw how few there were, I didn't bother. And I bet you overall, we got less than 1,000 fish last year. And they kind of showed up early, and then after that, nothing much. So it was a disappointing run last year. Nobody knows what this year will bring. It's like Chinook numbers on the coast-wide have been really good. The Columbia is getting bigger than average returns. And up and down the coast, out in the oceans, the reports are all very positive. There are lots of Chinooks out there. They're reasonably big. And we just have to wait and see what shows up in the Veddor. It's anybody's guess. Fisheries science is not exact. I would even hesitate to call it fisheries science, because their predictions are right like, half the time. So basically, if you flip a coin, you get the same amount of accuracy. The North Pacific is a big black box that we can't really see into very well, and nobody knows what's going to happen from year to year with any kind of scientific accuracy. We can take good guesses though. Speaking of guesses, last year I did the same video. I made a prediction that the pink salmon would be a very, very small run, and we had a record-breaking run. Puzzles me how that happened. Like, anybody who saw the floods back in 2021 would just, I couldn't believe that anything could survive those floods. All the gravel got changed, the river got completely rearranged, and yet we got this record-breaking number of pink salmon coming back. I just couldn't believe it. Like, even when they were starting to make those predictions that it was going to be like 20 million pinks coming up the Fraser, I just didn't believe it. I'm like, well, yeah, maybe they'll come up the Fraser, but they're not going to make that turn up into the Veddor. We're not going to see a lot of pinks. And then I remember standing in the middle of the river fishing for Coho, and behind us there was a continuous school. Like, we're talking 10 fish wide, continuous conveyor belt of pinks coming up for like 3 hours. Like, it was the biggest migration of salmon that I have witnessed myself. They were making, like, the water was rippling with fish. It was crazy. So, it goes to show you, we don't know enough about this stuff to really predict what's going to happen. So I think we've covered summertime red Chinooks enough. Good luck. I'll be out there trying to catch 1 or 2, but I never spend too much time fishing for summertime reds. I just, summer's for other stuff, and I don't need to be on the river every day like I am in October. So what other species? Well, the fall Chinooks, and the fall Chinook run starts kind of beginning of September. It peaks at the end of September, and then they kind of taper off. 6 years ago, our hatchery started producing double the normal amount of white Chinooks. The white Chinooks don't belong in this river either. They are a Harrison River stock, but we get them in the Veddor thanks to the hatchery. Nobody really knows how successfully they reproduce in the river. I certainly see them spawning. They dig these big reds in big bouldery gravels, and lots of them spawn in the river. We don't know how well the smolts survive in the river and how that reproductive goes. But anyway, our hatchery pumped out 6 years ago already double the normal amount of smolts. And what happened is we got roughly 3 times the normal amount of fish back. Don't ask me how the math works on that, but they double the production. We get 3 times as many fish back. And so 2 years ago was the first time we saw that supersized run of white Chinooks. That year, I wasn't kind of ready for it. I landed 100 Chinooks. The year before that, I might have got 15 or 20, like 100 Chinooks, that's a lot. So last year, I made a conscious effort to just not target Chinooks. I avoided casting into the sort of deeper, faster water where they like to sit. And I still landed 30 Chinooks while actively trying to avoid them. So these runs are really incredible. You know, take advantage of this amazing fishery. The grant money for that program runs out this year, and we don't know yet if it's going to be renewed. But we have like another 3 years of these supersized runs to look forward to. So yeah, that's enough on the white Chinooks. Let's talk about Coho. Last year was amazing for Coho. We had an amazing run. The survival rates in the ocean must have been particularly good. And like most years, I managed to limit out like maybe 2 times on Coho. So like limiting out, that's 4 adult Coho. And yeah, usually I do it once or twice in a season. Last year I limited out 15 times. Like it was nuts. The fish were numerous and they just kept coming. They weren't particularly big. I know right at the beginning of the season some people reported catching some nice big Coho, but I never saw any of them. I landed 120 altogether, and I think my biggest one was about 8.5 or 9 pounds. So they weren't particularly huge, but they sure were numerous. And I think that we can reasonably expect to see similar numbers this year. Like I keep saying, it's not an exact science, but the Coho run was good last year. Nothing's really much changed in the ocean. Conditions are still cool. A decade ago, we had this big blob of warm water sitting offshore, and the warm water really decreases the productivity of the ocean. You get less plankton and you get less nutritious plankton. And so the salmon suffer when we have warm conditions out in the ocean. That for the last few years we've had relatively good conditions. It's been cool water. The waters have been rich, and the Coho are an offshore species. They migrate way out there, and they feed in the open ocean. They're not really well studied out there. It's expensive to send research vessels that far offshore, so we don't really even know exactly where they go and how they feed and what goes on out there. We don't even know what their major predators out there are. Maybe it's Chinese trawlers, who knows? Anyway, we can reasonably expect to have good Coho numbers again. I'm definitely looking forward to that. That run, they start very early. The first Coho show up in August. We're not even allowed to retain them in August. But definitely September, there's a few Coho. They start trickling in, but the peak of the run isn't until mid-October. And then they kind of taper off again. So I did a whole video last year on Coho run timing. You can look it up on my channel, and if you want an in-depth discussion on Coho run, you can go visit that video. Let's talk about, well, it's not a pink year. We don't need to talk about pinks. Every year, a few of them show up, even on the off year. So I'm not saying you can't catch a pink, but there might be a couple of hundred that come back on the off years. I think those are strays from the Campbell River run. or they just might belong in this river, but there's a very, very small population of pinks that spawn on even numbered years rather than odd numbered years. So yeah, the last species really to talk about are the chum. And chum returns were very disappointing last year. There were hardly any chum. Coast-wide, really, the chum numbers were quite low, and nobody knows exactly why. You know, people like to point fingers at this and that. One of the reasons is that in Alaska, Russia, and Japan, they do a lot of ocean farming, so they'll take fairly small creeks, put a hatchery on them, and just pump out millions of chum. And when those chum return, they net them in the estuary of that little creek. It's called ocean ranching, I think is what they call it. Kind of a good idea, but it also, they're pumping so much chum out into the North Pacific that the wild fish are getting a lot of competition, and they, you know, overall, it's not awesome. Literally the ocean gets to carrying capacity where there just isn't enough food for all the fish that are trying to eat it. Which is staggering. Like you think about the size of the North Pacific, and there are billions of chum that get pumped into that system artificially, and ours kind of suffer. You add to that other challenges that these fish face, like on the Fraser, they've been targeted for roe fishery for many years. You know, they get seine netted, and the females get harvested, and the roe gets sold. It's a challenge these fish have. So. But still, some years we get really good chum numbers. The DFO likes to see an escapement of about 800,000 fish in the Fraser system before they open it up for fishing for recreational anglers. And whether we get that or not this year is anybody's guess. Typically by about mid-October we know whether there's enough chum coming back or not, and that's when they open them up. Sometimes a bit earlier, but time will tell. With the chum, we don't know whether they're going to open them or not. We don't know what the numbers will be. It's kind of a crapshoot. Again, fisheries science, not exact, and chum numbers are probably the most unpredictable of all the species that we get. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. If you're still watching, maybe I'll give you a little life update. I talked to a lot of people on the river, and everybody kind of says the same thing. It's like, where you been, man? Like, where's the videos? What's going on? Well, there's a couple of things. Steelhead fishing, I don't really like to promote it too much. The river's busy enough, and I don't really feel like I can have a big positive impact on that fishery, because mostly steelhead fishermen are kind of the diehards, and the majority of them treat their fish really well, and they fish ethically. You know, obviously not everybody, but the vast majority of people steelhead fishing are doing the right things. So I don't really even feel like I need to post the videos about it, because my personal aim in the whole YouTube and fishing videos on YouTube is to educate people and to improve the state of the fishery on the Veddor River. So I'm trying to discourage people from bad practices, trying to keep people informed on the regulations, and just try and make it a more positive thing for everybody. So steelhead videos, I do a couple every year, but I don't really promote it. I had a kick-ass steelhead season. For the first time, I kind of got beyond rookie numbers. Usually I catch like 3 steelhead a year. For the last 6 years, that was my number. 3 steelhead, that's it. This year I hooked like 50, and I landed 27 of them. So that was pretty amazing. I was blown away. I was stoked. It was beyond what I expected. I got the biggest steelhead in the Pacific Rivers Derby, so I won $1,000 for that fish. I weighed in the first fish into a couple of derbies. There's some more prize money. I got second place in the Chilliwack Dart and Tackle Derby. The fish was only about 5th in the big derby, the Fred's Derby, so I didn't get a prize there, but still, I was blown away. Like everything that I kind of wished would happen happened. I got for like the 2 seasons before that, 2 full years, I didn't catch a single hatchery. So kind of going into the year, I'm like, well, I really would want to catch kind of more than 3, and I really wanted to catch a hatchery. And I also was kind of in the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, it would be really nice to catch one of the bigger fish. All my fish were kind of around 10 pounds, and you kind of want to catch a big one. So all of those things happened. I got 6 hatchery steelhead, I got a big steelhead, I landed a whole bunch. It's kind of like finally after 6 years of steelheading, things kind of came together and gelled and clicked, and I got a lot of fish, and it was a lot of fun. I don't know, I've been busy too, so I kind of goofed around. Steelhead season, I was a bit of a river rat. I spent a lot of time on the river, so the last couple of months I haven't made a single cast in 2 months. I'm kind of itching to get out there again. I was just working stupid hours, like 50 hours a week. I recently quit subcontracting for Atmosphere Floors here in Chilliwack. I've been a tile setter for them for the last 10 years or so. I'm kind of now transitioning away from them and seeking more of my own clients and doing my own jobs. So hey, if you need any tile setting done in the Fraser Valley, let me know. You can contact me on Facebook. I'm one of the best tile setters around. You know, I don't like to brag about stuff. I try to be a humble person, but I'm really good. I'm meticulous, precise. I learned from some European master tile setters, and for the last 20 years I've been doing it full time, and I'm still learning, surprisingly enough, but I'm pretty darn good. There aren't many tile setters in the Fraser Valley that are better than I am. So if you want some quality work done, get in touch with me. I'll get you a quote on your project and we'll make it happen. Life updates. I might try some guiding this fall. We'll see how that pans out. I'm kind of a little bit on the fence on how that's going to go, whether I want to. I've been talking to Pacific Rivers about maybe doing some guiding for them. And I definitely want to pump out a little bit more content. I think that the Veddder River fishery in general, the crowding hasn't gotten any worse. It's kind of plateaued. You know, we have 2 million people in easy driving distance, and yeah, sure, it's an accessible river. Most of this river you can fish in like within a 5-minute walk to your car. It's easy, it's convenient, it's productive. So we get a lot of people, and despite all that, about 1/3 of the time during the season, I end up fishing a spot by myself. Like, it's not like I can't see anybody, but I'm not casting over top of anybody else or having to watch somebody else's floats, because I kind of fish the less busy, more marginal spots, because I know I can still catch fish there and I can have a better time without having to watch 20 floats. I do the combat fishing too. It just kind of mix it up. I have an awesome time on this river, but I've noticed over the last few years, definitely the poaching is kind of starting to get out of hand. And I hope this year I can put my 2 cents in there and educate people and sort of help them catch more fish, and at the same time get away from trying to snag fish. And I would encourage you, if you're experienced, to do the same. Just kind of, the best way to fix a snagger is not to yell at them. The best way is to teach them better ways. And a lot of people are convinced that these salmon don't bite. Well, they do, and they bite very well. It's just probably they're not biting what you're trying to show them. It's kind of very precise and finicky, and that's what makes it fun and interesting, is challenging yourself to make these fish bite. And it's super productive. I catch way more fish than any flosser or snagger ever does, I think. Like, between all the different species, I probably landed about 160, 170 salmon last year. Like, not many people do better than that. For sure, there are guys who've been fishing this river for 30, 40 years. They grew up on the river, they know it, they know the fish. They outproduce me by a big margin. I'm not the best rod on the river, not trying to be. My aim is to have fun doing it and harvest some fish for my family. And anyway, you know what I'm getting at, right? The snagging is getting worse. I aim to make a small difference in trying to fix it. And so a lot of what I'm going to be doing this season is going to have that objective. So teach people, inform them on what's right and what's wrong, and just help them catch more fish so that they don't end up snagging. That's, I think, the only way we're really going to fix this. So I challenge you out there to do the same. Let's bring this fishery back. It is amazing, it is awesome, but there are some problems with it, and we can make it better. So good luck out there, opening day, opening week. Maybe I'll see you. And thanks for watching. See you next time.